Welcome. I am Sophronia Scott, Director of the Alma College MFA in Creative Writing, and this is Faculty Friday. This is where I am in conversation with a wonderful faculty member from our MFA program, and you get a chance to learn more about what it would be like to work with a faculty person as you would as a student in our program. Today, I have with us the incomparable Robert Vivian, who is a well-published writer. He's published 4 novels, 2 collections of meditative essays, plays, poems, dervish essays, hugely talented. And he's been with Alma College in the English department since 2001. And we were thrilled when he joined our MFA program as well. Thank you for being with us here today, Bob.
Thank you, Sophronia. And I have to tell you that coming to the MFA program in Alma has been one of the wonderful delights of my entire life. I have just loved it. And as you know, leaving Vermont with its incredible program, incredible faculty, incredible students, I just couldn't ask for anything better, sweeter. So thank you for.
I'm honored to hear that. Thank you. So today we are going to talk about a concept that I actually learned from you when I was a student at Vermont. And it's about the concept of immortal wounds. And I still talk about it today. I share it with my students. I think about it in my own writing. And it's from a lecture that you gave many years ago, 10 years ago, I think, in fact. And so I think it's an important concept to share today. So before we get into it, can you explain first what is the concept of the immortal wound?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to read from, this is the coinage from Robert Frost, actually. And he wrote or said once, "It is absurd to think that the only way to tell if a poem is lasting is to wait and see if it lasts. The right reader of a good poem can tell the moment it strikes him or her that he has taken an immortal wound, that he will never get over it." So yes, I've been, that lecture was centered around this idea of Frost's notion of the immortal wounds, the things that we can't get over. And there's a passage in Shakespeare, I think it's Hamlet, talking about the wonder wounded hearers. And that just has always stayed with me. And I do believe, and have read from others, that there are certain moments in our lives, great pain, great beauty, that when they strike us, they are with us for good. And if I may, Froni, there's a passage from a novel that I absolutely love. It's called The Heart is a Lonely Hunter.
Oh, yes.
And Mick Kelly is one of the characters, and she's a poor girl living in the South in a big family. And one night she's out having a cigarette after babysitting, and she's sitting under a neighbor's house. And I'll just read one program came on after another, and all of them were punk. She didn't especially care. She smoked and picked a little bunch of grass blades. And then she hears this piece of Beethoven come on. And how did it come? For a minute, the opening balanced from one side to the other, like a walk or a march, like God strutting in the night. The outside of her was suddenly frozen. Only that first part of the music was hot inside her heart. She could not even hear what sounded after, but she sat there waiting and froze with her fists tight. After a while, the music came again, harder and loud. It didn't have anything to do with God. This was her, Mick Kelly, walking in the daytime and by herself at night. So Mick has this deep aesthetic awakening. And later in the passage, she starts scraping her thighs with little stones until she starts bleeding. And this moment changes her life. I won't, spoiler alert, I won't tell you how the book ends, but she wants to be a composer. And when I teach this book, I often ask students, well, how many female composers do you know? And usually, Clara Schumann is probably the only one that people mention. But this is just kind of a long way of responding, Froni, to this idea that Mick, this is what formed her as an artist. This deep pain, sorrow, joy, recognition, And after this happens to her, she wants to be a composer, even though all the deck is completely stacked against her for a variety of reasons. I know when I was a young writer, I had these moments too where I heard or read something so beautiful. I was like, oh my God, I want to give my life to this. And it's dangerous. We don't know the outcomes of these things. And we've talked before about like Tennessee Williams, whose sister Rose was lobotomized. And Rose shows up in so many of his plays. That was an immortal wound for him, I think.
So our immortal wound can be something that becomes, that forms the foundation of our writing. Because yeah, we've talked about that Tennessee Williams wrote about her, whether we realize it or not, it's not overt, but she is in so much of his work.
Yes.
Right.
And actually, Froni, when you joined the CNF class and we read your essay, Legs on Which I Move, I feel, and please correct me if I'm way off here, that essay was catalyzed out of a wound that you wrote about how the boots that you wanted to fit into, they weren't made for you. And you wrote so beautifully of that. And that the way I interpreted it was this was kind of a wound that you wrote out of. Am I way off?
No, I would not have used that word, but why is it that I still remember that moment? I was 7 years old. I still remember that moment. So
Yeah.
why do I remember it if not for the fact that I was wounded somehow?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm an academic, but I flunked kindergarten. And so I grew up for much of my early believing I was kind of stupid, which I now view as a weird kind of gift that has helped me as a teacher a lot, because I don't approach academic subjects necessarily in terms of intellectual power, but something a little more complex, maybe. I don't mean that it's better. It's just that wound, if I'm any good as a teacher at all, it's because I flunked kindergarten. And so, the things that we stumble often become, well, it's in the Bible, right? The stone that was rejected becomes the cornerstone. So I think of the immortal wounds in that way, that those profound hurts or failures or whatever they may be, we as artists, we take them and we write the glass menagerie for Tennessee Williams. We try to take the wound and make it beautiful somehow.
Yeah.
Which isn't dismissing the wound. It's not saying that didn't hurt or that wasn't bad. It's just, maybe it's a form of transcendence.
Yeah. And, sometimes I think we are too quick to want to push past pain, right? Or to think that it has to be, that we have closure, that we've gotten over it. But do we ever really? And it may not be a bad thing. It may be something that informs us, like you said, and it informs your teaching, right? That we can. I like the word transcendence. I think you're right. It allows us to grow. If we can't get over it, we kind of grow over it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. And we become something more because of that wound.
Yeah, it's like the last page of A River Runs Through It, when the elder father says, you like to tell true stories, don't you? Yeah, I like to tell stories that are true. And the father says, next time, why don't you make up a story? Because it's those we love and should know who elude us. And then he goes, now all the people I knew and loved are dead, but I still reach out to them. And that book is the response, you could say, to the murder of his brother.
Yeah.
And there's the last line of the book, I am haunted by waters. He's also haunted by the death of Paul.
Yeah.
But he turns that tragic murder into, this gorgeous novella or memoir or whatever people want to call it. And so that's the immortal wound that Norman MacLean, the gift he gave us with that beautiful book.
I could go on. I'm going to stop. You and I could talk about this forever. And this is supposed to be a short video, so I'm going to stop here. But if you, the listener, want to join in this conversation, because he and I are always talking about things like this, please come join the program. It is a very special place. We are taking applications now for our next residency, and please come in and join us. And I want to see you write to your next level. He's Robert Vivian. I'm Sophronia Scott. Our program is at alma.edu/MFA. I hope you will join us. Thank you.